Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us today. You noted in your testimony the importance of the work done at the Treasury Department to identify and disrupt terrorist activities, specifically by targeting their financial networks. And this work is critical and depends a great deal on cooperation of our allies around the world, specifically where intelligence sharing is concerned. And after the recent revelation that President Trump shared highly classified information with the Russian foreign minister, reportedly information given to him by an ally but shared without its knowledge, do you have concerns about the chilling effect this is likely to have on our relationships with these critical intelligence sharing partners?
Well, I can't comment on what information was shared or not, since the only thing I know is what I read in the press. But I will say I'm probably spending 50% of my time on TFI issues. It is, I think, perhaps the most important issue right now as part of my job. I assure you that I take it very seriously. I've had 2 foreign trips, meeting with both the G7 and G20, and in each one of those meetings with my counterparts, I have discussed this. And I'm happy to report that we have a very close working relationship with our partners and our allies on this issue, and something I think can be incredibly effective in stopping terrorism throughout the world.
Thank you. The White House has also asked you to review the Orderly Liquidation Authority established by the Dodd-Frank Act. And as you know, the statutory purpose of the OLA is to provide the necessary authority to liquidate failing financial companies that pose a significant risk to the financial stability of the United States in a manner that mitigates such risk and minimizes moral hazard. And I'd like to highlight some of the OLA provisions and ask whether you support them. In the case of a failure of a mega bank, do you support the mandatory removal of the mega bank's executives and board members responsible for the failure?
Again, we are going through an extensive review of OLA as instructed by the President. We are just starting that process. I have had discussions with many finance ministers and governors throughout Europe, and this is something that's obviously very important to them as well. It would be premature for me to make any specific comments on any aspects of it. We're doing a review. I'm open-minded to looking at all these, and I look forward to issuing a report, and we'd be more than happy to come back and update you once we've done more work on it.
Let me, recognizing your answer, put on the record 2 other issues which I would like you to bear particular attention. And I'll put it in the form of a question, understanding that your response would probably be similar to your initial response. Do you support the FDIC's authority to claw back compensation from executives or directors substantially responsible for the failure?
I would say as a general matter, I think that that is a good policy that has been instituted. So again, it is something we will review, yes, but yes, I generally support that.
Would you support the statutory mandate that taxpayers shall bear no losses from the exercise of any authority under OLA?
Again, I would say that that's an objective, but again, I would reserve comments, specific comments, until we complete the review. Obviously, we do not want to put taxpayers at risk in any way, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at all the core principles.
Mr. Secretary, the tax plan is rather terse in details, but it suggests that some of the highest income Americans would receive significant tax cuts, and the majority of tax relief to the remaining Americans would be rather minuscule or certainly small. And there's a possibility that in the proposal there could be indeed some increases on individual families or individual taxpayers. Are you committed now to ensuring that there'll be no increase on families or individual taxpayers less than $250,000 a year? And I'm picking that as kind of a reference point, but are you committed to something like that?
Let me just say that obviously tax reform is something that we are working on with the House and the Senate, but I can assure you that the President's objective and my objective is that we create a middle-income tax cut and that we do not raise taxes on the middle income. If anything, the opposite. We are trying to create a middle income tax cut.
Would that tax cut be equivalent to the tax cut enjoyed by the very richest Americans? People who make about 1% or the highest 1%?
Again, obviously, we are working on the details. One of the things we've done is we have proposed getting rid of almost every single deduction, which is something that is used by the rich in return for a slight reduction in taxes. And our objective is that 95% of Americans won't need to use itemized deductions and will be able to fill out simplified tax returns. And we look forward to working with you as we progress on the details.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.